Strauss, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hey, Larry and I have been trying to get together for a while. We're both tight on time. It is the holidays, Larry. We're gonna break it down real fast here. You've written a book. I guess we should start by saying your mom was someone who is, I don't know, how would you classify your mom's level of fame? She was in the hearts of so many of us, right? Whether it was Car 54, Where Are You, all the way through to Facts of Life. I mean, she was on so many things in her life, but it's also like she's that lady to a lot of people, but she means so much to us. How would you classify your mom's fame?
I don't know. She's just, she got recognized a lot. Not so much in the later years, but, you know, there was a time when it was hard to go anywhere without somebody recognizing her. And even when I was growing up, and she wasn't really famous, but people would recognize her from commercials. She had an oven cleaner commercial and a cough drop commercial. And people didn't always even remember where they'd seen her, but they thought they knew her. And
just in case you guys aren't tracking, Martha Ray, who was the mother figure on
Charlotte Ray.
Charlotte, sorry.
And by the way, Pete, you're in good company. Ed Sullivan made the same mistake in 1952.
Sorry.
Let's welcome Martha Ray.
Yeah. Sorry, Charlotte Ray. Who is beloved, and I should get her name right. There's also Martha Ray, who also was beloved. But Charlotte Ray is your mom, but you also had a notable dad who was in the arts. And so you're sort of given this artistic baton, and you've chosen to write.
I've done as much as I could to squander it, but
yeah. Talk about your dad real quick, just so we can get an idea of your background.
My father was a classically trained pianist, and although not, he would be the first to say, you know, not of concert, ability, but and a composer. His goal was to be a composer. He studied. He went to Yale on the GI Bill after the war and studied with Paul Hindemith, but and spent his life composing classical music, which wasn't very easy for him to get played. But he did compose an opera that was performed live on NBC, and he did a lot of more commercial writing. He wrote for film and TV. He wrote the theme of Car 54, Where Are You? Which
is, really? Okay.
Of course, kind of an iconic TV theme song. He always, bemoaned that would be what he was remembered for. And sure enough, in his New York Times obit, that's the first thing. But he knew, he was resigning. Just like me, I always feared, although I don't think it'll be true, I always feared I would be known for having written episodes of the first generation Transformers cartoon.
Right.
That still excites people more than almost anything else.
The other thing too about that, like, okay, Danny Elfman is known for a lot of things, but the thing that's probably gotten him a paycheck most consistently is writing the theme song for The Simpsons. 30 years of that thing getting played. It's just, you don't get to pick what it is. And your dad wrote an opera for NBC back when NBC put operas out regularly, probably like once a week, I would imagine.
Right. Yeah, which is pretty amazing.
It is.
Different world.
My dad had a degree in music, his undergrad, and he played. I mean, he was not a concert pianist either, but we had a full size church organ in our house, not like just like a little Wurlitzer, but like gigantic speakers and everything, and piano all the time. And my dad wasn't really a composer either; he was more of a church going guy, but. It is incredible because you are infused. No matter what happens, like my dad would sit down and just play. Like right now, this time of year, we'd sing songs all the time because he would just play and he loved to play. And it's all around you all the time. Has that stuff stuck? Like I love going to the symphony. It was hard when I was a kid, but I've developed over the years where I just adore it now.
Yeah, I love it. My wife and I went for a while. We haven't for a few years, but I love this. The LA Phil, my father, I had a developmentally disabled brother, and my dad he loved classical music. I mean, he connected with it in some way we never completely understood, but because it was a little obsessive. Like he would, when he was a kid, he would play Haydn's trumpet concerto over and over again. There was something in that. He was just like play it until until my father began to like hate it, like, but still, like anything to awaken his, this troubled child. And then I remember later in his life, I'd get in the car and he'd say, play Mozart. And when he said play Mozart, he meant Mozart's, I think it's 23rd piano concerto. Okay. And that's still like, it still makes me emotional. I still think about like taking him out for steak and lobster at Sizzler. And, there's just like that whole life we had, trying to make his life better, despite the limitations. But, and my dad used to take him to the New York Philharmonic, Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
And, as much as he could. I definitely have a strong connection, and I'm a high school teacher, and I pass that on to my students. Now that all music is, well, I shouldn't say all, because there's a lot that's not available on streaming services, but it's either on my computer or it's available to stream instantly. And I'm an English teacher, but I'm constantly making musical references and pulling things up, and whether it's lyrics or music, or somebody was talking about sad music. I don't remember how it came up, but I remember just saying to them, like, do you want to hear sad music? You want to hear some sad music? And I played the second movement of Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, which is just like, I mean, I don't know how you can listen to it, a good rendition of it, without starting to get emotional,
Yeah. It's the brain and our emotions and how they're tied and how music hits it. It's one of the special things about humanity. Even right now, like Tony Bennett is his brain is really, it's significantly degraded from where it was when he was 50, for example. But you put him on stage with a microphone, those songs are in there, and he can sing them still as beautifully as a 90-plus-year-old man.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Johnny Mathis is still doing it,
I had a student who had a terrible speech impediment. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say terrible, but she had a significant speech impediment. Sometimes it was hard to understand her. Mm-hmm. And we had a talent show, and she sang, and her voice was as clear as as imaginable. She had this beautiful, clear voice when she sang, but she could not replicate it without the music. I should say I'm actually I want to talk about my new book, but I have another. I did write a novel about jazz.
Oh, did you really? Okay, you've written 5 books, right?
It's called 5 novels. Yeah, it's called Now's the Time, and it was actually inspired, by just my love of jazz, which I think I partly was attracted to jazz just because it wasn't my parents' music. I mean, I used to tease them, like, you were in New York in the 1940s and 50s, and you didn't go to not Birdland. You didn't go to 52nd Street. Right. You didn't go to the club. You didn't hear Charlie Parker. What is wrong with you people? And but I think it was, because it was mine. Although my mother actually performed at the Village Vanguard, but it wasn't a jazz club then. It was a cabaret club back then. So anyway, Now's the Time was inspired by a story I heard on the aisle of a record store. I started talking to a guy, and he told me that when Clifford Brown, the great young trumpet player, died in a car accident, along with Richie Powell, his pianist, and that Max Roach, the drummer of that great quintet, that there was a tape that they'd made of their last performance, and Max Roach had it, but wouldn't listen to it for like years because he was so heartbroken. I went out and researched that, and I found no verification for that story. I don't believe that actually is. I think there was a tape recording made of one of their last performances, and I'm sure Max Roach was devastated to lose his friend and fellow musicians. But there's anyway. But that story, fictional as it may have been, was the inspiration for for my novel about
That's awesome.
just about jazz and the vault, what's in the vaults, and what what never got recorded. And but it's really it's a father-daughter story, but it's as much as anything just my my homage to the music that's really inspired me as a writer as much as any writer has.
Yeah, I love that. And now I want to get into your book, The Light Man, but first I want to back up and just stay here in this spot because you come from this creative family. You know, your dad is making money with music, and your mom does the impossible, and she performs on stage in front of cameras, you know, throughout the decades, different places. It's really remarkable. And then you become a teacher, but also a writer. And so you have the ability to take, like, you know what a time machine and what an emotional, powerful thing music is, right? Where you could say, you want sad music, here this is. Or there's certain songs that you and I could talk about, and they remove us from the here and now and take us back to 1983 or 19 whatever, right? And then we have this power, and you can feel it, and it's almost like I don't need to watch a reel on Instagram. It's in my head. I can see it and I can feel it. It's better than just music. It's something bigger. And you have the ability to give that as you're like, not only are you a teacher, you're actually someone who gets paid to write, and you know that the power of music will swirl all that together into something even sweeter still.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm finding, more and more this generation now of students, they never have anything bad. There's like no generation gap in music, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, I remember when like, if I played jazz, some students would get it and they'd love it, and other ones would be like, like that's some old stuff, and but my uncle plays that sometimes. But like now, I just don't see that. They are open to everything. They're, and partly I think it's because the modern music, particularly hip hop, is very much it's an eclectic form. It takes music from other eras and reinvents it. And so, and a lot of great jazz has been sampled in rap and hip hop. So I think that's helped to bridge that. But, when I play Frank Sinatra, they don't go, turn that old stuff off. They're like, yeah, some of them are more excited by it than others, but their musical tastes are not it's not about the now for them. Right. It's like, that's good stuff. I like that. So, that's really encouraging. So they actually want to, they want to learn this stuff. Right. They want to know it. Recently I have a creative writing class, and one day I just felt like playing some music. I'm very improvisational with teaching. I've been doing it for 30 years. So I always have a plan, but I almost always just go in some other direction. I've taken to just like talking to the students for a few minutes, and just like feeling that, how are things, what's on their minds, and then just like go in some direction. And so this one morning, I just put on, I had some music playing as they were coming in, and I was like really feeling it, and I could see, like that some of them were really like, wow, this is cool. And so I just played a bunch of I played a bunch of jazz, and the assignment was, what should this be called? That's it. Just name it, and why. Why. Just give it a name, because so often jazz riffs just sort of get arbitrarily named anyway. They don't, they get called like, Gravy Train, or or grilled cheese, or unless it's a standard. And so that was really interesting for them to think about what. But one kid said, and I was playing, certainly not one of the most popular things. It was Jackie McLean from one of his Blue Note albums. And this kid says, what if I already know what it's called?
Love it.
And I said, turn your phone, turn Shazam off. There's an app where you play something that tells you.
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, my uncle played that for me.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that tune. I said, well, pretend you don't know and come up with something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. He actually knew. He knew it
We,
already.
we go to the, like I said, we go to the symphony and the concert hall quite a bit. I get tickets super discounted because I'm a veteran, and I can't get enough. And we saw this young kid. I say young kid, 23 years old, but he's a world class cellist. And so it was him and a piano accompanying. That's it on the stage. And his name's Vladimir Fung. So he's like this wild, crazy mix of like a Vladimir and a Fung, together.
Yeah, right.
And he just plays the hell out of in this case, Tchaikovsky. And you shut up and you can only pay attention to his style. And he's very like emphatic when he plays. There's a lot of soul, like in how he does it. But at some point, the music takes you to where it's going to take you. And whether it was by Tchaikovsky's design or your exposure to the cultural thing, you find yourself having this internal conversation and this stream of consciousness. And I'm curious if you ever try this at all with your students, like, let me know where you go. Like, this is a free writing assignment,
Oh, yeah.
talking,
Yeah, no, that's actually my favorite writing assignment to do. Is just free write to jazz. Or I actually one time I did free write to free jazz. Free jazz by Ornette Coleman, which is a completely improvisational,
right?
20 minutes or so. But yeah, I love doing that. And they, and the kids love it too. Just let the music kind of fill your mind and your consciousness, and and you'll get at things that you didn't necessarily know were there, and you might be able to connect them in ways that you weren't able to connect.
And there'll be a commonality between the kids, I bet, where you're like, a lot of you went on a similar ride. I mean, at least my girlfriend and I, we have the same problems. We talk all the time, but you sit there and you're like, hey, then I thought about the cat, or something. There'll be something in there that triggers a thought, and we'll both be having this mental mind. But we're also connected at the brain anyhow because we're together all the time.
Sure.
Let's talk about Lightman. Let's talk about your new book. It's set in the 70s. And the 70s in New York was an interesting time. Very cool, very dangerous, very different than now.
Yeah, it was a city careening toward the brink. It's funny. I always have to remind myself that that New York didn't actually go bankrupt till the 80s, and the trash barge, that floating trash thing, that was in the 80s too. But the 70s were kind of a wild time in the city. And for me as a 12, 13, 14-year-old at that time, it was particularly impressionable. The danger, the menace, the excitement, the energy of that place for me as a kid, and and all the things that I was exposed to as a middle class kid.
Right.
We lived uptown. Actually, I mean, we had lived on 96th Street near the park, very nice building, but it was a 2-bedroom, and my brother had attacked me one night, in his his psychotic fog, and my parents got scared and they wanted us to have separate rooms. So we moved uptown. They could only afford, a 2-bedroom uptown. It was 10 blocks uptown, but at the time it made a difference. In fact, I was abducted on the street shortly after that, and it was a wild scene. At one point I wrote about this. This novel, I should hold up, Lightman. This novel I started writing it when I was, barely an adult, and it's taken all these years to figure it out, to get distance and perspective from what really happened and get at the deeper truths. But when I wrote about this as it happened, or as I remembered it happening. I was grabbed by some guy and he was just like pulling me away. My mother was with my brother. She was holding his hand. She had let go of me because I was like, I didn't want to go wherever we were going. So I was just like holding her back. So she's like, she walked away almost to teach me a lesson. And this guy grabs me.
Oh my God.
And here she is with my brother. And she turns and just screams, and my mother could scream, like my mother can shake the world with her, could shake the world with her scream.
Yeah, I bet.
And my brother did what he always did when she screamed, which was he put his hands over his ears and he freaked out and started running and biting himself. And so here he's like running into the street and, in traffic. And her other son is, is being dragged away. And it was quite a scene. All I remember is that he let go of me. And I can only assume that he either, felt bad or which I doubt, or that he somehow seeing my brother in the condition he was in made him no longer want to take me from this, from this woman. But so it's almost like my brother's, illness and his, what he did to himself almost, might have saved me. But anyway, so that was, that was my introduction to the new neighborhood. And I remember junkies lying on the stairs, not much older than me. So it made an impression. So the New York of this novel, people who lived in the 70s then may say, I mean, most people who read it so far are like, yeah, I remember that city, the way it was then. It may feel a little exaggerated to some people, but again, that's to me, that's the essence of that place at that time. And really, there's a line in it. One of the characters says, I think he looks at one of those "I Love New York" T-shirts, and he says, like, how can you love a city? Like, it doesn't make sense to him. But in a way, this is a book. This is my love letter to New York, as twisted as it is.
Yeah, the New York of the 70s was a crazy time. I mean, you have a lot of good things, and New York is a big place. So on this block, it can be crazy, and then 4 blocks over, it can be something totally different. You have the Yankees and Son of Sam, and all kinds of punk rock explodes into the New York music scene. There's a lot going on, and it's also the hangover from the 60s and all of the cost of everybody kind of letting everything go. And then you have these destroyed lives because not everybody can let everything go and keep a society. How much does that play into your novel, though? Like, just your own, like, is this like through your eyes, your character, or?
Well, no. So originally, at one point, I told this story from the point of view of a 5-year-old, but that just was so limited, and really very self-indulgent. So now, in fact, the protagonist, who's also the narrator, is a character who just sort of he just sort of appeared in one of the earlier drafts. The character, who's loosely based on my father, a guy named Mike, is very different than my father. My father was one of the nicest people I've ever known, nicest, gentlest, most generous people I've ever known. But I always felt like he envied the angry. He envied people who were angry. Like he had that. He had the anger, but he never felt entitled to express it or even feel it, in an immediate way. And so in a way, Mike is dedicated to my father, because Mike is an angry guy. He's the guy my dad wishes he was, although I'm glad he wasn't. and Mike is he's a light man, as the title suggests, but he can't get inside the theaters because of the union. He worked at Poughkeepsie, but when he came to New York with his wife, after they fell in love and she got pregnant, it's all in the backstory, but he couldn't, the union wanted to be an apprentice and all this other stuff. And anyway, so he's outside running the spotlights that tell people it's opening night. And then Al is a guy who in an earlier draft just kind of comes by to bum a cigarette off of him. But he's become the protagonist. The more character work in fiction, you have to know everything about these people. They have to become fully formed people. And the more fully formed he became, the more interesting he became. And then, and he became a vehicle to get the distance that I needed to tell this story. He's the outsider trying to understand this family and trying to understand, this guy, Mike, who can fix things. He's like this brilliant repairman who has a side business fixing people's televisions and radios and toasters and blenders, but he can't fix his own son.
Right.
And it's destroying him. And he's trying. He builds this. The opening chapter is about Al at the park seeing this man, and this child starts freaking out because of some noise that happens, and he's biting himself and scratching himself, and the father's trying to calm him down, and everyone's just watching, being glad it's not them, glad it's not their child. And then he pulls, and then his other son hands him this paper bag that he has, and it has this Boston Red Sox cap, and he's attached all these pieces of mirror to it, and he puts it on the boy, and the mirrors reflect all the light, and it calms him down. And Al sees this and this is like an inspiring moment for him, that this man figured this out, that he had this child with this impossible problem, but somehow he figured this out and made this hat for him that calms him down, and it makes him want to know this guy, and it makes him want to, because he sees this as he's searching, he's groping for manhood. What does it mean to be a man? And to him, this is the epitome of it. It's taking care of your kid like that.
Roz is asking a question about the older brother character. Is he essentially your older brother, the character in the book?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about that is the 5-year-old who's based on me. I was, I didn't think my brother was damaged. I thought my brother was special. I thought he was magical because he could relate to objects, and he seemed to understand them. He seemed to live in a world that, seemed actually a little better than the one that, that we're in. And so in the story, he's concocted this whole fantasy that his brother Davy's come from another planet, and that they crashed the spaceship, and all the crazy people wandering around the streets yelling and, at the moon, and, like they're all from Davy's planet.
Right.
And,
AKA New York City. That's like all like that.
I mean, there's a lot of people in New York City who seem to have been dropped from another planet. And so that's how this boy interprets it. And Al is like fascinated. But Al is so, at first he's like, I don't believe this, but then he's like, maybe it's true. Maybe they are from another planet.
I know we're going to run out of time here. I want everybody to go to Amazon. Use the link there on the screen or in the show notes. You can find it there. It's called Light Man, and it's from Larry. He's awesome. Yeah, there it is. There's the book right there.
There's my name too.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you have a book group and you want to visit a virtual visit, I will visit any book group virtually.
Nice.
If you want to read the book, and then you can ask me questions and tell me what you liked and didn't like, and what disappointed you, or
no, come on, that'll be good things. Whatever. Larry Strauss, man, you can write. Hey, how long does it take you to write, and what book is next? Real fast.
Well, this one, off and on took a long time, but the fastest one I wrote was called Fake Out, and it was took me 6 weeks to write the first draft, and then a few months to write to finish it up, and it got optioned for a movie, but though it was never made.
That happens.
Optioned a few times.
Most options don't get made.
No.
Hey, when's the next book due out?
The next one, hopefully 2022 or 23. I'm actually working on a young adult novel.
Nice. All right, perfect. Hey, and then Roz wants to know, how do people connect with you? Do they do it online, or what's your preferred?
Most people either, well, when I write a column people don't like in USA Today, they somehow find my email address, or else they Twitter me.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm on Twitter, and my email is just lmystrauss@gmail. That's probably the best way.
Okay, cool. If you guys can't figure that out, let me know and I'll get in touch with Larry for you and connect you guys. Hey, man, I appreciate it so much. I know you're short on time. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a happy holiday season.
You
And
too.
be well, man. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.